In 2010, Congress offered an alternative to the Healthy Hunger-Free Act known as Community Eligibility Provision Program that guarantees a free lunch and breakfast to students in communities in need. This program today is in more than 20,000 schools nationwide and serving more than 9.7 million students. Joining me in the studio is Robert Shaheen, the Director of Food Services at Wareham Public Schools, here to digest what Community Eligibility Provision Program is and how it impacts our community and our students. Welcome, Robert.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, CEP, the Community Eligibility Provision Program, is an alternative to how schools can operate the National School Lunch Act. But this CEP has a few unique characteristics, including that no applications are required, free lunch and breakfast to the whole student body rather than just a specific population. And also schools are reimbursed using a formula based on percentage of students eligible. So before we go further to what CEP can do to the community and how we are benefiting from it, let's start with when did Wareham adopt CEP and why?
So back in 2014, that was the first school year, just before I had got here. They were approached by the Department of Education to start the community eligibility program because of our free and reduced percentage, based on not applications, but based on directly certified students through the Gateway, which is a website that DESE uses to identify students if they're directly certified through SNAP or WIC, depending on what benefits they might have. And so our percentage was about 47%, which is above the 40% threshold to get into the program. And with that, you get a certain amount based on that percentage that would equate to about 75% of the reimbursement rate back of the free student rate. So, which is about $2.80 based on the $3.20 it was back then, I guess. And so you would run your program. All students would have the opportunity to participate, to get a free breakfast, a free lunch. It was district-wide. The whole district could enter that rate. In some districts, based on the ISP or the student identified rate, you could do just it by school or a few schools or the whole district. So we had the whole district in there. It was kind of low, being at 47%, but we were able to run the program and make more than break even, so we did well. And then the next year, every year you can reapply and check your number based on the number of students, population. And so our number actually went up to 53%, which is about 85% of the federal reimbursement rate.
You mentioned that our percentage was 47, and also you said that that was kind of low. Now, in order for school to implement this program successfully and either break even or not lose money, meanwhile doing this, is based on that percentage, how many students are qualified. So at the end of the day, do you still feel that CEP is the best alternative to our schools, to our community?
Absolutely. With running the program, even at that lower rate, there's a lot of things that go into a food service. You have to control your costs, your plate costs, what items you're buying, the number of people that you have working in the district, when you have to buy equipment. So all those things come into play. And so managing that at that rate was a trial and error for the first year. And you're in for 4 years. Once you sign up, you're supposed to stay in for 4 years. You can opt out at any year. You can also, after the first year, reapply to add a year to it if your percentage changes. If it goes up, you can add another year. If it stays the same, you can add another year. If it goes down, you want to stay where you are. So ours went up slightly from the first year, and we're going to do that again this year. Every year we keep trying, and it's a great opportunity for students to participate, and that's a big part of it. So you want to be able to run the program financially sound, but you want to offer items that the students will eat. Breakfast and lunch.
And you were mentioning that you're working on like a dollar for breakfast. And may you tell us what a dollar breakfast looks like?
So we have bid contracts with different vendors for perishable, non-perishable foods, and we get better pricing. So we can get like a chocolate chip muffin, a bag of fruit, like grapes, milk, and a juice, and that runs me cost-wise about $1.05, $1.10, and the reimbursement rate for that is $1.99 back. So there's a little extra money that you get in there, and you have to account for labor and equipment. So the more people that participate, the more revenue you'll get. So that's how the program really works. It's why they want to offer free meals, to get all the students to participate. So our participation right now is about 80% for breakfast, which is phenomenal. It's great. It was at 50% before the program. And lunch is creeping towards 70%, and it was around 50%.
Now, before we get into why somebody would not want to participate, why a student would not want to participate, our community is very diverse. We do have a population of families, students in need, okay, they are in federal assisted programs, and we also have students who are coming from very affluent families. So once again, CEP guarantees a free lunch and breakfast to every single student. Shouldn't we just be focusing on those who are in need?
Well, I think, for when you get an education in this country, it doesn't cost anything. You can go to a public school. I think the meal should be included in that. So I'm part of the School Nutrition Association, which we advocate for the programs to make sure that they're not being cut or cut back on. And part of what we also are doing is advocating for have the meal included. And you can't please every student. There are some different tastes, and we try to change the menu up so that we appeal to a lot of the students. But some children, my own children, used to like to have lunch sent to school, even though it was, we could pay for it or it was free. And that's why we're not at 100%. I think some students still prefer to have their parents send lunch with them. And although our meals are whole grain, less sodium, less sugar, we're really healthy. We're pushing the programs to be more health conscious. Everyone's looking at nutritionals now. We provide those.
And I'm sure by providing these meals free to the whole student body, eliminates that stigma that, oh, this person cannot afford. It's
great because when the student would go into line to get their meal and then pay for it, and they would come up as free or reduced, they don't tell you that you are that, but kids know. And this has eliminated that altogether. It takes the stress out of getting lunch for students who can't afford it, on a daily basis. And it really changes their attitude and their anxiety about going down and getting a meal. So more people participate, and that's why I think a lot of people who were free might not have participated because of the stigma of having a free meal.
What did we used to have? What program did we used to have before CEP?
It was just the regular school breakfast program, school lunch program. So, and it was based on applications, and if you qualified for a free meal or reduced meal, or you had to pay for the meal, and that was set up in the system when you got to the line to pay. And so, it just takes away all those issues about lunch shaming, which you hear about, in different districts about taking meals away, and we don't ever do that or would ever do that even if we didn't have CEP, because I don't feel that that's the correct thing. Once they have the meal, just account for it, and we can deal with how we're going to get the money for it later on.
Okay, so tell us about how the lunch kids go to the cafeteria, but how is breakfast administered, let's say in elementary school?
So we started a new program. The students used to come down to the cafeteria, and it was taking way too much time. Almost 45 minutes to an hour to get all the kids into the cafeteria, serve them, because the cafeteria doesn't hold the whole student body of that school at one time. That's why we have different periods for lunch and breakfast. So we decided to implement a program through a company that gives grant money to do breakfast in the classroom. And what this does is you send a number of items to the classroom in a cooler before the students arrive. So they get off the bus, they go to their classroom, hang up their book bag, put their coat away, sit down. They get their items in a cooler, pick the bag up, check off their name, and they sit down, and that actually starts the time on learning. The Department of Education changed that so that would count, as long as they're doing some instructional period time while they're eating breakfast, it would count towards time on learning. This was well received by all the faculty in the school, the principal, the superintendent. It was a great idea. Less commotion, they had more time to eat, in the classroom, and they could start their studies right away. They didn't have to wait a half hour or 45 minutes, to get their meals and then go back to class. It was really a win-win situation, and more students participated. We found that having the students come down to the cafeteria or even try to stand in line, there was a lot of commotion. They're little kids, they're kindergartners, first graders, and some of them who are shy didn't like that, wouldn't participate. This way, they're in the classroom, they can socialize a little bit with their friends in the classroom, and it's a great setting for breakfast in the classroom when we did that tour.
Absolutely, I remember. And what about cleaning? I mean, isn't it a lot of work to clean and to get these kids back focused again and, okay, open your books now, stop eating?
The students are great. I mean, I think they're habit-based. So once you show them the process and how to do it, and the routine is every day, they follow it. It takes them 2 or 3 days to get accustomed to it, but they're great. They know how to get their items, what items they need to get. They check off their name. They consume the meal, and then they know where to throw it away and then sit back down. It's really a part of the classroom makeup now, having breakfast in the classroom. So it's a great feature, and they have no problem with running the program that way.
My name is Jocelyn Ulloa, and this is my kindergarten class here at Deacon's, and right now they're eating breakfast. I have all my kids usually eat every day. I have about 3 or 4 who don't. My kids who are eating, they're excited when they come in. They know exactly what to do. They know what to grab. They bring it right to the table. And I think it's important because I know that there's definitely some kids in my class that are not eating before they come to school. And we are 5 and 6 years old, and we do not have lunchtime till 12:30. So I know that if they don't eat the breakfast now, they are going to shut down by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. They're going to be visiting the nurse with their bellies hurting. We save all the food that we don't use, and we use it during snack. If we have leftovers after snack, we send it home, especially if it's a long weekend or a vacation. I make sure it all goes with them so nothing goes to waste, and I know that it's being used.
Does this program interfere with your class time and your schedule?
Nope, they come right in. I have the breakfast opened up. The coolers are open before the kids get here. They have morning work. Some of them are actually doing morning work while they're eating, as long as it's not the cereal. It's a little hard. They eat quickly because some of them know that if they eat fast, they might get a chance to get some more.
Now, in order to get more students participating, especially for breakfast, did you try to tell parents that don't feed your kids before coming back to school?
No, I mean, it's fine. Some students will eat breakfast at home, and some will eat again in school. That's fine. I mean, I think, students should have access to food, all day long, snacking, a sort of thing on healthy products. And some students would come to school who had eaten before and didn't participate in breakfast. That's okay too. We also had a sharing table, so if they wanted to choose some items and decline a few items, they could put it on a table for students to have at snack, or maybe somebody wanted an extra apple for breakfast, or they could take some items home. I think in a district that has a high free and reduced rate, and like you said, low poverty, food insecurity is a real problem for students, especially kids. They don't understand that, and it's hard for them to have access to food. I'm not saying the parents aren't feeding them, but everyone has busy lives, and some kids don't like to eat first thing in the morning. So this gives them an opportunity to get something when they're at school for no charge.
Very good. Now, the percentage of identified students is calculated by dividing the number of identified students by the number of students enrolled as of April 1st of the previous school year. Please help us digest what this is. Okay, I just read it, and yeah, it's so even. Yeah.
So in order to get to figure out how you're going to run the program next year at what rate, you take the student body enrollment for the whole year. I start in September or August, and I run these numbers every month and try to figure out what students are directly certified. Mm-hmm. And so as they get directly certified, I put them aside. They're good for the whole year. And then when I get to the end of the year, that's how by April 1st, I calculate that number, and that percentage will base what you're going to do for the following year. So you have to do all the work before to figure out what the percentage is, so you can get your rate for the next year. Okay. And then you do that every year. And so once you get in the program, it's 4 years, and you can reinvest or reapply every year to change your number or go up and so forth. So that's why they do it by April 1st. They have a cutoff time. That's just part of the program outline.
Tell us how this percentage influences how much we are reimbursed.
So yeah, if there's more, if the ISP rate goes up, which is if we're at 53% free and reduced, times the multiplier, which the federal government sets, it can be between 1.3 or 1.6. Currently it's at 1.6. You multiply that by a percentage, and that tells you how much of the federal rate you'll get back. So let's just say the federal rate for a student lunch is $3.30. It equates to about right now for us, it equates to $2.80 we get back. That's the basic of the formula. The government does a little more calculations that I can figure out, but that's what the average is we base it on.
Okay. Now they multiply the 1.6 can fluctuate anywhere between, as you said, 1.3 to 1.6, and the higher the percentage, the better. Exactly. Do you fear that it will drop? And if it does, do you see ourselves getting out of the program?
So the only threats for the program right now is where the Hungry Free Healthy Act hasn't been reauthorized. So there's been some issues where some of our, not our delegation, but representatives in Washington want to block grant the programs. And block grants were something that were back in the early 90s that were tried, and it's just not a good idea. So basically what a block grant is, the government decides on what you spent last year. For, say we spent $1.5 million on the program. They'll earmark that $1.5 million for next year, and that's all you get. So, okay, that's all you get, but it goes to the state, and the state not necessarily has to give that to the student, to the programs, the school meal programs. And if there's a change in that year, like your student population goes up, you're not gonna have enough money to buy more food. If there's a disaster, like in some states where they had the hurricanes and the floods, and they had to, go to other states and get food and so forth, you would lose all the ability to provide meals to students based on that. So that's the only threat for us is block grants, and they were thinking about cutting the CEP enrollment to get in there at 60%, move the threshold to 60%, not 40%. So that would throw us out, and quite a bit of districts would across the country would lose out. So like I said, I'm very active in Washington and talking to delegation. I go School Nutrition Association once a year to the Legislative Action Conference, and we go up and we talk to delegations, the delegates up there, about our programs and what's important to us. And we're lucky in Massachusetts, for the most part, all of our delegation supports our programs, and they're really fighting to make sure that we keep them and make them stronger. Have more things available. We use USDA foods. Which is a great program. We have entitlement dollars because we're an at-risk, community in terms of our poverty level or whatever. It's not really bad, but it gives us an opportunity to have almost $90,000 in entitlement funds to buy USDA foods.
How do you justify CP in Wareham versus to those who go there to Washington trying to justify CP, let's say, in Mattapan?
So it's the same. I mean, if the school percentage for free and reduced is at that level, 40% or higher, there are a lot of districts that are in there. There are some that aren't. So there is a little hesitation with some districts to get in. They're nervous about breaking even. So I've been helping, when I go to different conferences, I actually present and help them understand based on the formula that I use here in Wareham to make the program work. And so it's just have an understanding of how it works and seeing it work. Same thing with breakfast in the classroom. When we did that, there was a lot of pushback in the beginning. Seriously, there was.
But from whom?
Well, from some of the administrators. I think they were nervous, like you said, with the cleanup and the mess. So we started a pilot program. We did just a few classrooms at a time, and the teachers who really needed it, because they had some different class time that the students had to be available for right away when they got there. So this was perfect for them. And then we met with all the faculty after about 6 weeks of doing the pilot in those classrooms and explained to the other teachers, had them talk to them about how the benefits of it were, and then we ended up rolling out to the whole school, and they want it in the next school and the next school. So once they do it and see it, the fear goes away and they understand that it's a real benefit to the students.
Now, in terms of reimbursement, there's the federal free rate reimbursement and federal paid rate reimbursement. So when you don't break even, where's the money coming? Where's our money coming to supplement?
Yeah, so this is part of the lunch shaming problem where if there's high debt for unpaid meal charges, who pays for that at the end of the school year? The Department of Education regulation, actually the federal government regulation for the National School Lunch Program is that a program that is negative at the end of the year on June 30th has to start at 0 on July 1st. Now, this doesn't just go poof and it starts over. The school district would have to reimburse the food service department, or the town or city would have to reimburse the school if they couldn't come up with the funds. And a lot of people don't understand that. There are some districts that are $30,000 and $40,000 in debt from unpaid meal charges. And so that has to be, by law, has to be paid back to the food service fund. You just can't start at 0 and think that that's going to disappear. So that could affect, $40,000 could be a teacher. Absolutely. At a school, or it could drain on some funds, at the town level or the city level. So we're lucky we don't have to deal with that part because all the students are free. We don't have any charging policy in place. There's no need for it because everyone has access to breakfast and lunch. They can buy some a la carte items, which they would have to put money in their account or bring money in to buy them. We have some of those things they can do that. But yeah, it's a real problem, and that's where the lunch shaming part comes into, where they actually take away students' meals because they don't have money in their account. And we're really trying to change that perception and make it so that, the onus of that should fall on the school, the principal, or the town in terms of having a policy to take care of that issue and satisfy that debt, because the Department of Education will not allow us, even if we made money in some areas, we can't go back and pay off things like that. Oh. So it has to come from the school department or the town or city.
Ooh, the town, this town, no more money.
And that's another benefit for CEP,
yeah.
Right? Because there's no debt for, our program is doing very well since I got here. We had some problems before I got here, and working with the staff, the faculty, they've been great. I have a great staff. The managers do very well. They watch costs. We change the menu up. If things aren't working well, then we'll try new things. And when you make some money, you put the money back in the program.
And let's talk a little bit more about the food that the kids are receiving. Normally, when we think, when I was in high school, at the food, I'm like, oh, this must be the worst of foods, So you feel like you're getting a poor diet. But reading about CEP, this diet is well watched. You don't just go and buy some random foods just because you need to make sure it's under $1 or something like that. It's regulated. So the kids are receiving a healthy nutrition-based foods.
Exactly, and that's across all the programs at all the schools. There are regulations for serving fruit, for serving vegetables, having whole grains, milk. These are all the items that you would get, if you're a student at any food service program. And they have to meet regulations for calorie counts, sodium levels, and nowadays, people don't want processed foods. When you go to the supermarket, you're buying fresh produce. You're making sure stuff is fresh. You're looking at the labels to see what's in there. They're taking a lot of the dyes and things out of food. So we're doing that even more so at the school level for the programs. The manufacturers and the food brokers that deal with us work really hard to make the products so that the kids will eat them. They're in competition for their items, So we work really hard. We have a program called the Department of Defense, DOD, and we buy fresh fruit and vegetables through the USDA and have those things available every week to students. We're trying to do I've just started with organic gardens in 2 of the schools.
I was about to mention, teach these kids to grow their own foods.
Right. Well, understand where food comes from. You'd be surprised, in the summer program we have a couple of gardens, one at the library and one at the middle school. And students don't understand. You tell them, where do you think a cucumber comes from? And you tell them it comes from the ground in the dirt, and they're just like, that can't happen. How does that happen? So it gives them an education side, and that's why it's important to try to get these. The cafeteria is a teaching area too, not just for food for the students to come eat, but to learn where food comes from. So having an organic garden in the cafeteria shows them these things are grown. We have fresh basil. We have 3 types of lettuce. The staff can go over and clip the lettuce right off, wash it, and put it in with the meal right there in front of the student. It's amazing. They love it. They love that fresh side. A lot of the competition, like the Paneras and the Chipotles, they're doing all things fresh. The students want to see that, at the higher levels in their meals, and that's what we're trying to do.
Very good. Tell us again why this program, CEP, was not necessarily approved by the school committee or the town.
I think it was the fear of whether you can make money with it and break even. That's the bottom line of the programs, because the food service department is supposed to be self-sufficient, separate from all the other departments in the school. They can't take money out. If we're making money, they'd love to use some of the money, to pay for the busing and stuff that happens, but it's part of the law. The food service programs should be self-sustainable. They should be reinvesting in themselves to buy new equipment, better products, and I think it's just, it can be a burden to some districts because to have these programs and not run efficiently. And that's what the fear is with CEP. Is everyone going to participate, even though they're all free? So that's the fear.
Because free is not free. Free, somebody's paying for it. Right. We need to know where the money is coming from.
It's coming from the federal government. So it's a program funded by the federal government. That's where we get all our reimbursements from. The state kicks in a little bit of the money. Depending on the severe need and extra money that they have in the state, they'll earmark some for school food programs. So we get some money from the state. But 90% of the money comes from the federal government. Our entitlement dollars, based on our free and reduced rate, is from the federal government. So we use that money to buy USDA foods, which is wonderful.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that some of the implications of this program is worrying about, are we going to break even? Who is going to be paying for this? Who is going to be responsible of the bill at the end of the day? To me, I was thinking, does CEP put a negative connotation to a community, lowering our, maybe market, our real estate values? Like, because we are labeled as a poor community because this program is for students coming from families who are struggling.
Exactly. Well, if you think about having food provided to students at no cost, that's going to help families not have the burden of paying and preparing the meals. And the students are going to be healthier. They're going to be better students. They're going to have breakfast.
Are we measuring how kids are doing in correlation to when they started getting breakfast?
So we can check with the nurse. The nurse visits have gone down. I don't know the exact number, but it's dropped probably at 30-40% the first year we started at Deaconess in terms of visits to the nurse. They have seen some of the reading and writing, I know, in the schools have gone up based on some of the programs the teachers are doing, and they do a great job. But having the food, part of that, makes the students more attentive. They're not having the belly aches. They're not sleepy. So I think that definitely helps the whole process of the learning process at all levels. If you don't have something to eat, you can't function properly. Like you and I, we take food for granted at where we are because we know we can get it and eat when we're hungry. Students in school sometimes don't have that option. They do with CEP. It's available if they want it, and they don't have to worry about paying for it. And that, whether other towns think that's a stigma or not, I don't think so. I think it's a benefit because you're taking care of their needs in terms of their nutrition, and that makes them better students, and they can learn better.
How is the program doing in high school? I can see how in elementary school, eat the food they eat. High school, they tend not only picky, but they have the freedom. They have a car. They're thinking Panera later on. Some of them have jobs, so they don't necessarily need to eat what you're providing them. Yep. So how are they doing?
The high school participation is very good. They're at like 70% for lunch participation. And like I said, we try to cater to what they want. They go to Kentucky Fried Chicken, for instance. We have a meal called Chicken in a Bowl. Right?
Speaking of a chicken and bowl, they just turned because
that's one of the main items. Yes. That's our biggest seller. So
I spoke to a teacher at Wareham High School, and I mentioned to her, I said, well, I'll be speaking with Robert and we're about community eligibility provision program, and all she said was, I don't know much about the program, but just tell him chicken in the bowl needs to be there every single day.
Although they want that. So at the high school level, they want that. At elementary level, I could serve a hot dog every day and it would sell out. But you can't do that, right? So you have to find, at different age levels are different likes.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being in our studio to explain to us.
Appreciate it, yes.
You know, I learned so much about it, and I hope that our viewers, parents, know more, have learned more about this program, and they will encourage their.
We have a website. It's a part of the school website, but it's basically just for food service. They can go there. They can look at some of the menu items. There's nutritionals on there. There's other information about programs. They can call the food service department and talk to, I can answer questions. That we can share some.
And they're very good about that. You're very good. Somebody sends you an email, a text. You're really good at communicating with the public, which I thank you a lot.
People want to know things about what's happening. I'm not going to hide anything from them. I want to make sure that we're transparent. That what we're doing for the students and the children. We want to make a difference and help them, and not have to worry about food.
Very good.
Perfect.
Thank you, Robert. To my viewers, thank you so much for joining us in another episode of the official report filmed right here at WCTV studio in Wareham. With me, your host, the Queen Banda, and to thank again my guest, Robert Shaheen, the Director of Food Services at Wareham Public Schools, here to talk about Community Eligibility Provision Program. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.